If we are to go to predict the language, I think the best example on how it may sound is actually the current language, Pidgin. Pidgin is not exactly a language like Spanish is, but it's a sub language to English that has been adopted by villages in China and a lot of tribes in Africa. Pidgin English first originated in the middle 1800 in China, and the current Chinese Pidgin language only has around 700 words, which is quite little. In the product, you will actually hear me read out a few sentences in Pidgin English. What you will hear then is Nigerian Pidgin English. The reason why I find Pidgin English more relevant is because it actually is being used to unite a lot of African tribes that usually had different languages and made it harder for them to communicate with each other, and then that's usually led to disagreements and even violent conflicts. But if they have a fellow language, they can actually communicate with each other. The reason, again, why I think Pidgin English is so important is actually the fact that English has been shaped quite a lot by the colonizations the British Empire did. That's why it's still relevant, especially with the colonization of the America, which if we can say it like this, it's the English language greatest achievement on staying relevant. A language dies out if nobody speaks it, and that's simple. That's why a lot of Hawaiian tribes loses their languages. But if Africa could become more global by speaking a language that's easier for English users to understand, then they could become united, and it will be more widespread. The thing about Pidgin English is also that it's usually quite a lot easier than regular English, but a normal English speaker can still, to some extent, understand what they're saying. Of course, there are a few words you need to change a little bit. For example, the word chop means food. But if you set aside those things, you will actually to how come closer to understanding the whole thing. So what? So the answer to the question is not quite clear and cut, because that's all. It also depends on predicting the future and what English speaking countries will actually do in the future. For example, we cannot predict it. Maybe there happens a third world war, where one country actually wins, their language takes over, then we speak that language. It's impossible to perfectly predict the future. But if English wish to stay relevant, it needs to become more global to countries and even a continent that can become more in depth with global marketing and economy. That way, English stays relevant and becomes even more attractive for speakers to learn it as their second language. And that's where I think Pidgin English is the best option. If it's going to sound exactly like Pidgin English, I do not know. But I think that Pidgin English is the closest representation on how it's going to sound, or how it could sound like. It maybe also go back to the Scandinavian roots, the Indo-European, sorry, and more leaning on the American side. I think the British language we normally know will soon fade if the world doesn't end by then, which it hopefully do not. And that's my try for an answer on this question.